As of early 2026, the United States economy is undergoing a violent structural transformation driven by a suite of aggressive political decisions from the second Trump administration. While the stated goal is energy dominance and industrial sovereignty, the immediate fallout is a measurable cooling of the labor market and a sharp spike in distress for small to mid-sized enterprises, SMEs. The unemployment rate has crept up to roughly 4.4% to 4.6%, but beneath this aggregate figure lies a more volatile low hire, low fire stagnation, where large incumbents retrench and small businesses face an existential pincer movement of tariffs, high interest rates, and regulatory upheaval. The Trump administration's imposition of steep tariffs, 25% on imports from Mexico and Canada, and up to 60% on China, has fundamentally disrupted supply chains. While intended to force reshoring, the immediate effect has been an input cost shock. Kansas City Fed analysts estimate these tariffs have cost the economy thousands of jobs per month. Industries reliant on cross-border components, auto, electronics, construction, are shedding labor or freezing hiring to preserve margins. Contrary to the administration's assurances that foreign exporters would absorb the costs, data from Q4 2025 indicates that nearly 95% of tariff costs have been passed directly to U.S. importers and consumers. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, for durable goods, apparel, electronics, auto parts, and home furnishings has surged, effectively imposing a regressive consumption tax. Reports from the Peterson Institute for International Economics confirm that the average middle-class household is now bearing an additional annual cost burden exceeding $2,600. The National Federation of Independent Business, NFIB, reports a historic dip in small business optimism. Unlike corporate behemoths, Walmart, Amazon, that possess the capital reserves to renegotiate supplier contracts or absorb margin compression, Main Street retailers and independent contractors face a lethal squeeze. Input costs for raw materials, steel, aluminum, lumber, and finished inventory have risen by 15 to 25%, forcing a wave of insolvencies among independent hardware stores, boutique retailers, and local construction firms unable to pass these hikes on to already cash-strapped customers. While headline metrics show a nominal uptick in factory construction, subsidized by tax incentives, employment figures tell a different story. The reshoring initiative is defined by capital intensity, not labor intensity. Factories returning to U.S. soil are highly automated. Consequently, the anticipated boom in blue-collar employment has failed to materialize at a scale sufficient to offset job losses in the logistics, retail, and agricultural sectors caused by trade war retaliation. U.S. agriculture is once again the primary casualty of asymmetric warfare. Counter tariffs from the European Union, China, and Mexico have targeted U.S. soy, corn, and pork. Despite federal subsidies attempting to plug the gap, family farms are consolidating at an accelerated rate, being swallowed by corporate agrotechnology conglomerates. In a decisive pivot, the administration moved in early 2026 to repeal the EPA's 2009 endangerment finding. This dismantles the legal bedrock for climate regulation, effectively subsidizing the fossil fuel industry and stranding billions in green tech investments made by smaller, policy-dependent renewable startups. The DOJ and FTC under new leadership have largely abandoned the Biden-era crusade against corporate consolidation. January 2026 saw a soft pivot regarding tech exports to China, allowing the sale of advanced AI chips with tariffs, signaling that corporate revenue generation has superseded strict national security decoupling in specific high-value sectors. The administration is enforcing a Silicon Fortress strategy. While loosening domestic AI regulations to spur innovation, it has tightened export controls on chips to China, despite some mixed signals. This has bifurcated the tech sector. AI hardware giants like NVIDIA and Intel are caught in geopolitical crosshairs, while software firms face a show me the revenue correction, leading to a silent recession in tech hiring. My analysis: the narrative of protecting the little guy via protectionism is the single greatest geopolitical sleight of hand of the 2020s. We are not witnessing the revitalization of the American spirit. We are witnessing the industrial-scale liquidation of the independent merchant class. When you apply a universal shock to a supply chain, such as a 20% blanket tariff, you are not hurting the foreign adversary as much as you are initiating a domestic stress test. In this test, liquidity is survival. Multinational corporations, with their diversified supply chains and massive cash hoards, view these tariffs not as a crisis, but as a competitive moat. They can absorb the hit for 6 quarters. The local hardware store on Main Street cannot absorb it for 6 months. Therefore, the net result of America First economic warfare is the acceleration of monopolization. It is a harsh irony that policies framed as anti-globalist are effectively handing absolute market dominance to the very globalist megacore the rhetoric claims to despise. Main Street is being hollowed out not by foreign competitors, but by a domestic policy that raises the cost of entry so high that only the Titan class can pay the toll. We must ruthlessly dismantle the nostalgia-driven delusion that tariffs bring back 1950-style factory jobs. This is a fundamental misreading of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The factories being built in Arizona and Ohio in 2026 are not the bustling assembly lines of Detroit's golden age. They are silent cathedrals of robotics and silicon. The America First strategy creates manufacturing capability, but it does not create manufacturing society. We are trading low-cost imported goods, which subsidize the standard of living for the American poor, for high-cost domestic goods produced by machines, not men. The employment impact is a K-shaped divergence on steroids. High-value specialized technicians see wages rise, while the service sector workforce, mainstays of the Main Street economy, suffers from stagflationary pressure. Their cost of living skyrockets due to tariffs, while their employment opportunities shrink as small businesses, their primary employers, go bankrupt. The result is a volatile, hollowed-out middle class ripe for further radicalization. From a grand strategic perspective, this economic warfare is a desperate, flailing attempt to reverse the polarity. The United States, the declining hegemon, is breaking the machinery of global trade to stall the ascent of China. However, the strategy is flawed because it relies on the assumption that the U.S. consumer market is the indispensable engine of the world. By 2026, this is less true than it was in 2016. By walling off the American market, we are forcing the rest of the world, the Global South, BRICS Plus, and even parts of Europe, to build parallel trade architecture that excludes the dollar and the U.S. consumer. We are essentially sanctioning ourselves. We are creating a fortress America that is economically autarkic but geopolitically isolated. The short-term pain inflicted on China is real, but the long-term cost is the acceleration of a multipolar world where the U.S. dollar ceases to be the universal lubricant of trade. When Main Street feels the pain of inflation, it is actually feeling the tremors of the dollar losing its exorbitant privilege. Expect a record number of Chapter 11 bankruptcies among U.S. retailers and small manufacturers who relied on global supply chains. The commercial real estate crisis will deepen as Main Street storefronts go dark, replaced by automated warehousing and delivery hubs owned by megacaps. The failure of manufacturing jobs to materialize in mass numbers will force a political pivot toward universal basic income, UBI, or massive government jobs programs. The dignity of work narrative will collapse under the weight of automation. The right will likely rebrand welfare as patriot dividends funded by tariff revenue, a redistribution of wealth from consumers to the state, then back to the displaced worker. The United States will resemble a techno-feudal state. A small elite of capital owners and tech sovereigns will control the automated means of production behind high tariff walls. The Main Street economy will be effectively dead, replaced by a gig economy service layer existing solely to facilitate the logistics of the upper class. The era of the independent American shopkeeper will be studied in history books as a casualty of the trade wars of the 2020s. However, the strategy is flawed because it relies on the assumption that the U.S. consumer market is the indispensable engine of the world. By 2026, this is less true than it was in 2016. By walling off the American market, we are forcing the rest of the world, the Global South, BRICS Plus, and even parts of Europe, to build parallel trade architecture that excludes the dollar and the U.S. consumer. We are essentially sanctioning ourselves. We are creating a fortress America that is economically autarkic but geopolitically isolated. The short-term pain inflicted on China is real, but the long-term cost is the acceleration of a multipolar world where the U.S. dollar ceases to be the universal lubricant of trade. When Main Street feels the pain of inflation, it is actually feeling the tremors of the dollar losing its exorbitant privilege. Expect a record number of Chapter 11 bankruptcies among U.S. retailers and small manufacturers who relied on global supply chains. The commercial real estate crisis will deepen as Main Street storefronts go dark, replaced by automated warehousing and delivery hubs owned by mega caps. The U.S. economy will look less like a free market democracy and more like a corporate state mercantile empire. The tech Cold War with China will have bifurcated the global internet and trade systems completely. You will trade within the dollar block or the yuan block with no crossover. The small business sector will be a shadow of its former self, replaced by franchise models and digital platforms owned by the megacore. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.